So let's talk about the design and the build quality of this Galaxy A14 here. It literally looks like a Galaxy S23, but it's plastic. Not just any regular type of plastic though. It's that fun, quirky type of plastic, that type of plastic. Hopefully you can hear that, but it's that type of plastic. But regardless of all that, I do think for the price, for $200, the build quality on this thing is pretty solid. It's just the right amount of heft at 200 grams when holding this thing, and it's just the right amount of slenderness when gripping this thing and looking at it. I don't like how all the buttons are on one side though. The button placement is just a little too high for me, but the plastic edges provide a really nice grip when holding this phone, and there's very minimal rocking on a flat surface when tapping on the screen. And speaking of that screen, it's very bright and vivid. I like how it's completely flat, like I said, and I like how straight out of the box, it's a 90 hertz refresh rate. You don't have to go into the settings and change it. It's just straight out of the box, which I appreciate. And that 90 hertz really does make a difference. Last year I made a video on the Galaxy A13, the predecessor to this one. I can say just the addition of that 90 hertz refresh rate to this one makes this A14 feel so much faster and so much better to use just by adding that refresh rate improvement. Now there are some chunky bezels and a very chunky chin, but you have to believe me, in real life, like when looking at it, they're not even that bad. They look not even intrusive at all. So I was a bit worried at first when I initially started using this phone. It was rather slow and choppy during the setup process, or not during, but after the setup process. Immediately it was really slow and choppy. But when I did give this phone a breather from all the app installs and all the settings changes I did and just really hammering it with use, after that the phone worked fine. So what does that tell you? That this phone really can't take, loads like our more expensive Pro phones here, but moderate and light use especially, these phones excel at. And I'll be honest, for being a cheap Android phone that still has some degree of quality to it, this phone actually performs pretty well for the price. App load times I really like, and I really like the animation when opening apps. It just makes it feel that much faster, like that little pop-up animation. My photo editing in Lightroom wasn't really an issue either. This phone kept up with it pretty well. And all that coupled with the 90 hertz refresh rate now that we have really makes the user experience of this phone quite snappy and quite smooth. And this is the stuff I really like about the Galaxy A14. Firstly is that 5,000 milliamp hour battery. A really impressive battery life here on this phone. It can really last 2 days if you want it to. I do a lot of YouTube watching, a lot of photo editing, a lot of photo taking, and between all that, I'm ending up at like 40, 50, 60% at the end of the night. Next, I love how this phone doesn't try to act like it's a $1,000 phone. Samsung made compromises for the price in just the right areas here, I think. This translates to things like the camera app not having animations. Also, there's no haptics. It's just sometimes you get vibrations on the phone, but really no haptics when typing or anything like that. And not having an always on display. Things that are not necessarily basic, super important features in a phone, this Galaxy A14 leaves out, just to help the phone perform better and also to give us that budget price of $200. Now, not everything is all amazing about this A14 here. There are some things, not even that I dislike, just some things that I think people should keep in mind and take note of if they are considering this phone. Firstly, I said that the scrolling is nice and smooth thanks to the 90 hertz refresh rate upgrade, but there still is a noticeable lag really every time that you're using the phone. Now, it's not terribly bad. It only happens for a quick second and then the phone works fine again, but it is still there. Next is the button placement. I don't know why all the buttons have to be on one side. Why can't the volume be on this side? I really have to shimmy my hand up here just to reach the volume. And that fingerprint reader / power button, although it's very functional and the fingerprint works pretty fast and pretty flawlessly, I just wish it was just a little more tactile. If this was the same power button fingerprint combo that the Galaxy S10e had, then that would be a really nice addition to this phone. But there you can kind of see the cost cutting. So there's no wireless charging, no fast charging. The speaker quality is not the best. But aside from those things, which honestly aren't even that bad, the rest of the phone is pretty good. And after looking at these shots, I think they look pretty good. And I was going to describe to you like megapixels and processing and saturation and things like that, but I'll just leave it at, for the price that you're paying for this phone and everything else that you get, I think the camera does actually a pretty good job. So I did do a video on the A13 if you want to check that out. I think that A13 might still be a good choice depending on what your uses are if you need it as a second phone. But this phone here, this phone is pretty good too. Like I've said, for the stuff you get on here, I think for $200, this is not that bad of a deal at all. And it's only gonna go down, the price of this, in the coming months. But yeah, that's been it. Hopefully this was a informative video, and I'll see you in the next one.